Hello, my name is Michael Phoenix, and this is the Michael Phoenix Show. In today's episode, we will be discussing morality and what it is and where does it come from. So, what is morality? Well, morality is a set of rules or laws that we define as individuals or as a society that governs behavior and actions. Now, other animals have certain kind of morality, but it's not exactly like what it is for humans, because humans have abstract thought, which means that we have we define things in our minds, and then that can be applied to the world. So, for example, many animals, especially social animals, have rules within their pack or within their flock or group that governs their behavior. Like in a dog pack, when a dominant male comes into the or a dominant pack member, male or female, comes into the circle or interacts with another dog or pack member, then the submissive animal will roll on its back and show its stomach to signal to the other animal that it is submissive. And this is a rule that is followed. But it's not an abstract rule. The dog can't define this rule or communicate it, or it probably isn't even really aware that is a rule as we would be aware of it. But it just learns it, and it does it when it is appropriate. And other things that animals do is, animals have what we would consider to be something that almost looks like altruism. From my perspective as an evolutionary thinker, I don't believe that altruism exists, but what we would call something like altruism, like an animal will die for its young or for another pack member. Now, this is not a rule or a virtue that the animals are aware of. They just follow. They do it instinctually, or it is a learned behavior, right? But we as human beings, we have abstract thought. So we create an actual rule that we can say, that we can define, that we can outline, that applies to our life, that governs our behavior, and helps us to be able to, it's like a roadmap for the way that we should conduct ourselves. And another reason why this is important for humans is because humans, we do have instinctual behavior. I think that a lot of the behavior that we have, though we would like to think otherwise a lot of times, a lot more of what we actually do is subconscious instinctual behavior. That being said, as animals go, and we are animals, but as animals go, humans, our behavior is more learned than probably any other animal. And one of the reasons for this is that we are born, because we have such large brains, our heads are very large, and compared to other animals, compared to our body size with other animals. So because of this, we are actually born at a more premature stage than any other animal. and a lot of our brain development happens after birth. So a lot of what we learn about how we should behave, or a lot of our behavior, is actually learned behavior after we are born, right? So morality is basically ideas and rules that we learn and that we internalize, that acts as a guide to for us to understand how we should conduct ourselves and behave in the world. Now, the next point that I want to come to is, where does this morality come from? Right? Where does this morality come from? And I think that there are a couple of different schools of thought about where morality comes from. Now, one of those schools of thought is more of the religious community, and the more of the religious community, and what a lot of their fundamental belief is that they believe in a type of revelation, where at some point God, or the ultimate truth, or unfallible truth was given to a certain human being at a certain time, right? And that human being then brought that information back to the rest of humanity, and that truth is undeniable and it's unchangeable. So what that means is that, let's say, for example, the Ten Commandments, right? Those are morals that were given to Moses by God, and those truths define how we should live our life. And why should we accept those as truth? Because from this perspective, God, the ultimate truth, was revealed to this man, and we have, if you accept that, then that's where you derive your understanding from, right? So this, to me, is, I really have a hard time with this, because I've spoken with a lot of people who to me have a lot of sense. Like, they're able to rationally make arguments, and I get a lot of value from their ideas in other parts of life, because they talk about it from a perspective of reason. I'm able to follow their train of thought. But when it comes to morality, they go off into this realm of revelation and God coming down and talking to someone, and it's just like, that you lost me there. That's like, to me, that's like someone saying that Santa Claus is real, and it's just like, my rational brain just cannot accept that. There's no proof. I've never seen Santa Claus. I've never known anybody that's seen Santa Claus. I've never seen a human that can fly. I've never seen reindeer that can fly. So to me, this idea is completely foreign. Now, if you want to talk about inspiration or revelation in that way, I do believe that, I do believe that ideas can arise in people's minds spontaneously, and it can be a good idea and it can be something new. And I think that all ideas come about in that way. All good ideas just pretty much just like somehow pop into somebody's mind, and so the idea of inspiration and revelation of ideas is not something that I can't understand, but the fact that this one idea that might have popped into this one person's mind is the end-all be-all and can never be challenged and has to be accepted by everyone. I don't understand that. If I hear a good idea, I will listen to it, and I will usually use a critical thinking process. Even with my own ideas, I'll use the critical thinking process to analyze that idea and to find parts of that idea that are congruent with my way of thinking, and usually I'll find some parts of that idea that are incomplete or just don't apply to the way that I perceive the world. And so all ideas are fair ground to me for analyzing in that way. So to have an idea that can never be questioned is just, I think that's just inhumane to me. That's denying our basic ability to be humans, because that's what we do. We perceive the world, and we apply our cognitive functions to that. And so that idea of morality, to me, while I'm open to having a deeper understanding of that perspective, that doesn't really do much for me. So while I'm not going to say that those kind of morals I don't apply those kind of morals to my life. If I do apply them to my life, I apply them not because they were revealed to Moses by God, but because I have gone through the critical thinking process and I have accepted them as something that I want to adopt within my own personal morality. Now, another place where morality comes from, and I can resonate with this type of morality a little bit more, is a morality that comes from reason. And this is the type of morality that people like Sam Harris talk about a lot. And the only problem that I have with the rhetoric that comes from that is that a lot of times people think that reason is absolute, like there's only one possible that the way that they are reasoning is like it's almost like a revelation from God that can't be questioned, and that their analysis, there's more than one way to analyze things. And one problem that I have with the way that Sam Harris looks at morality is it seems like he's almost starting with the premise of a Christian understanding of morality, right? And then using reason to prove that morality, right? So he'll start with the fact that it's obvious that it's wrong to steal, right, or to kill. He'll start with that. Then he'll use reason to prove that. And it's like, for me, though, people like that claim to be atheists, claim to not to not be coming from a premise of biblical or theology. I think that if you look at really what they're saying, it is basically just using reason to prove these religious ideas or this religious morality, and he'll people like Sam Harris, they like to say like, okay, like it is objectively obvious that our society is better than a Muslim society or a fundamental Muslim society because our women are allowed to, we don't have to wear scarves around our heads, right? Now, if you take that form of reason and you take it to the fullest extent, right? Then you would say that in Africa, where tribes people wear no clothes, right? They don't have to. Obviously, if you walked down the street in America with fully naked, you would be thrown in jail, right? Okay. So is a tribe in Africa more liberated and obviously on a higher moral level than we are because they allow themselves to be naked, right? So he's taking a premise that he already has accepted as truth, which is that America is morally superior to the fundamental Muslim world, and he's using reason to work backwards from that, And for me, it's just like, I grew up in this society, so I'm glad that you can go to the beach and see women in G-strings. Personally, I would rather go to the beach and see completely nude people, but that's just me. I go to nudist colonies where that's accepted, but it's not the norm in America. And personally, I do feel like we are morally superior to the rest of this culture. But that's neither here nor there. So, moving on from that, yes. So I believe that and I've also heard Sam Harris use this argument, saying that if you measure happiness as the standard for good and bad, right? If you measure happiness for the standard of good and bad, then that is an objective way to define morality. A morality that results in happiness is superior to a morality that results in less happiness. But even this argument really breaks down, because if you think about human behavior like the purpose of human behavior is to achieve happiness, then at many points this breaks down. For one thing, even in Sam's own arguments, happiness, people reporting their own happiness is not a valid way to understand the success of a culture. For example, in America, though we have a very high standard of living, we have, income inequality, though it exists. We have a very low poverty level, and so, but if if we report our own happiness and compare that to the reports of people's self-reported happiness in, say, a place like the tribes of the Pakistani tribes, where Al Qaeda was being sheltered and stuff like that. What the Pashtun tribes? Would we report ourselves as being happier? Because I'll tell you that one thing that's happening in America is that individualism, though, which to me as an American is very important to me. I believe in it. I think that I want to live in a society where that exists. But I also believe that as happiness goes, I'm not convinced that people that live in a society where individualism exists are happier. Because for one thing, humans are social creatures. We're actually evolved to exist within tribes, within communities, within families. And so in this society where, in this capitalist society, which I believe in the free market, I believe that it has contributed to one of the most affluent economies that has ever existed on Earth. But I also believe that it isolates people, and it is taking the family away from the community, and it's taking the individual away from the family. And this is contributing to a decreased feeling of happiness, even though our opportunities for success are higher. Our feelings of happiness it doesn't increase our feelings of happiness, because there's a study, right, that during the World War II, where London was being bombed, England was being bombed, and they had to make a decision, because they were saying, well, let's protect all the children, and we'll remove these children from the city, and we'll take them out to the countryside, where they'll be safer. And but the adults couldn't leave the city, because it was like, this is wartime, and we have to part of the role of citizens during wartime is to continue to do their jobs, even under threat of danger, to keep the economy rolling, and to keep the city rolling, so that we aren't, because part of why they're bombing is to destroy the morale of the city and to destroy the economy of the city, right? So we have to keep working. So let's separate the children and take children to safety. But they had to decide whether it would be more damaging long term for these children to be separated, this is to experience the trauma of being separated from their families, or to endure the danger of being in the city, right? Because even though the children were safer in the country, they would choose to live in the danger zone and to not be separated from their families, because they were happier when they were with their family. Okay, and there are many other times and occurrences where what makes people happy is not necessarily what is best for them long term, right? Because people eating sugar makes people happy. Oh great, give a kid some Halloween candy, and that kid will be the happiest. We'll be bouncing off the walls and laughing and singing. But 20, 30, 40 years from now, when they're getting their foot chopped off because of diabetes, because of a diet that they learned when they were kids, Is that going to make them happy? So a lot of times humans reporting their happiness, to me, is not it's one way that you could argue that morality could be objective, but to me, there's other ways to look at it. Is happiness the end goal that we should be judging our behavior upon? Is that our purpose, to be happy? There's also another study or observation that shows that when people report their happiness, couples without children report being happier than couples with children, right? Because they get to travel, they get to, their relationship, they get to be with each other and not have the distractions of children. Children are, changing diapers and figuring out how to send your kids to school and dealing with, all of their problems. That's difficult. That's challenging. It might not be, you might not define that as happy making, right? But the majority of people, when given the chance, choose to have children. Now, why is this? Maybe there's something deeper that motivates human beings. Maybe there's a deeper purpose that behind our behavior that can't just be explained with the idea of happiness, right? Okay. Now, there's another source for ideas about morality, and this is evolutionary theory, right? The basic purpose of human life, along with all other life on Earth, is basically to successfully reproduce our DNA into the next generation and into the future, right? That, in my opinion, should be the measure of morality. What is the most successful behavior for achieving that purpose, right? And then then you can take happiness into account, because I do believe that happiness, the reason why certain things make us happy is because they have evolved, they have been incentivized, but we can't only trust happiness because we're in a constant state of evolution, right? And those states of happiness are usually kept in balance and kept in check by other things in the environment. Like, say for example, the fact that we think sugar tastes good was because we evolved in a time where we didn't have access to vast amounts of sugar. The sugar that we could find, what was good for us, it was in fruit, and pretty much it was in fruit. And eat pretty much all the fruit that we could get was good. If we found a big old tree full of figs that was actually ripe when we arrived there and wasn't picked over by some other tribe, it was good for us to eat as much as we could, right? That was good calories, good for our diet. And we weren't eating like that all the time. So, we have to realize that we have these incentives and these pleasure